"This place isn't for you. Get out," shouted Manager Thomas as the security guards approached. Danielle and Maria were wearing long dresses and had a firm look in their eyes, hands intertwined. But no one there could have imagined who had just parked in front of the hotel. The cool marble echoes under high heels. Danielle adjusts the strap of her navy blue dress, a fabric that shimmers subtly beneath the crystal chandeliers. Maria walks beside her, her gentle hands smoothing her skirt, a nervous gesture she inherited from her mother. The Grand Plaza Hotel exudes luxury in every detail. Gilt on the moldings, expensive perfume in the air, polite murmurs floating between champagne flutes. The revolving doors still tremble behind them. Danielle inhales, the scent of fine wood mixed with something that smells of exclusivity. Their footsteps cut through the silence like razors. A blonde receptionist, Clara, looks up and hesitates. A second, two. The professional smile freezes on her face. "Can I help you?" The voice comes from behind. Thomas, a manager in a charcoal suit and red tie, approaches with measured steps. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. There's something in his tone, cordial on the surface, icy underneath. "Do you have a reservation?" The question is laced with suspicion. Danielle opens her small purse, fingers searching for her cell phone. Maria moves closer to her sister. It's an instinctive movement, like when they were children and the world seemed too big. "We're here for the charity event," Danielle says, her voice firm. Thomas looks up and down. It's not a look that evaluates. It's a look that measures, weighs, judges, as if trying to decipher a riddle that shouldn't be there. A calculated pause. "Did you guys miss the community dance?" The world stops. Danielle feels the ground crumble beneath her feet, but her face remains still. It's as if her mother is whispering in her ear. A queen's posture. Always. Even when they try to make you small. Maria takes a deep breath. She remembers the mirror in her room, hours earlier, when they were getting ready. She remembers her mother sewing that same dress in the wee hours of the morning, her calloused fingers guiding the needle with surgical precision. Every stitch was a promise, every seam a prayer. "Excuse me," Maria speaks softly, but the word echoes. Thomas smiles. It's not a smile, it's a blade. It's just that these kinds of events usually, well, you know where it is, right? The community center is on the other side of town. The gilded hall falls silent. Conversations are interrupted. Glasses hang in midair. Luxury becomes a trench. A gray-haired woman looks away. A man in a tuxedo clears his throat uncomfortably. Clara, the receptionist, pretends to organize papers that were already organized. And that's how two sisters discovered that, for some, skin color is an invitation to enter that's denied before they even reach the door. Maria feels her hands begin to tremble. Cold fingers reach for her sisters, an automatic gesture, like when they were little and the storm haunted the house. Danielle squeezes back, but doesn't take her eyes off Manager Thomas. The gilded room becomes an aquarium of curious gazes. The air conditioning blows coldly on the backs of their necks. Maria pulls her shawl tighter around her shoulders. A small, almost imperceptible movement, but one that betrays the discomfort growing inside. The chandelier's light reflects off the polished marble, creating an involuntary stage where they have become the main attraction. Clara, the receptionist, pretends to check her schedule for the third time. Her fingers tap nervously on the keyboard, but her eyes can't completely tear themselves away from the scene unfolding before her. "Look." Thomas tilts his head, as if examining a curiosity. "Don't you really think you belong here?" His smile is an open wound. Each word is measured, calculated to cut without leaving visible blood. It's the kind of violence that leaves no mark on the body, only on the soul. A nearby couple, Richard and Helen, he in a navy tuxedo, she in a pearlescent dress, exchange knowing glances. Helen whispers something in her husband's ear. They both chuckle softly, as if sharing an inside joke. At the corner table, a middle-aged black man, Marcos, looks down at his drink. He recognizes the scene. He's experienced versions of it. The ice in his glass melts faster than he can muster the courage to intervene. Clara stops pretending to work. For a moment, her eyes meet Maria's. There's something there, It's not overt support, but it's not indifference either. It's recognition, as if she knows, as if she remembers some injustice she'd chosen to forget. It was Mom who sewed this dress, remember? Maria whispers to her sister, but the phrase echoes inside her like a mantra. Danielle closes her eyes for half a second. She sees Regina at the borrowed sewing machine, 3 in the morning, calloused fingers guiding each stitch. It's not just a dress, the mother said. It's armor. It's history. It's proof that we exist in the spaces that try to deny us. The memory warms her cold chest. Maria feels her posture straighten on its own, as if her own mother were pulling her shoulders back. They weren't born rich, but they grew up with the bearing of queens. We have the same right as anyone else here, Danielle says softly, but her voice carries the weight of generations. Right? Thomas laughs, a laugh that echoes hollowly against the marble. Funny how you guys confuse right with, how can I put it, trespassing. The words fall like stones into the silent lake of the hall. Maria takes a deep breath, finds her own voice. The only thing invasive here is your education, sir. The silence that follows is dense. Even the background music seems to have paused. Some silences scream louder than any discussion, and theirs echoed like a hymn of resistance in the golden hall of exclusion. The hall becomes a silent courtroom. Richard leans toward Helen, whispering something that makes her eyes gleam with barely concealed malice. She covers her mouth with a gloved hand, but the laughter escapes through her fingers like sweet poison. The sound echoes off the polished marble. At the corner table, Marcos twirls his whiskey glass between his fingers. The ice cubes clink against the glass, the only honest sound in the room. His eyes meet Danielle's for a second. There's recognition there, a silent complicity, but also something that hurts more. Helplessness. He looks away first. Clara pretends to rearrange papers for the 4th time. Her movements are mechanical, nervous. A bead of sweat runs down her temple even with the freezing air conditioning. She knows she should say something, do something, but her salary trumps her conscience. A young man, Andre, stops fiddling with his cell phone. He discreetly raises his camera, not to help, but to record the scene. For him, it's entertainment. For them, it's public humiliation transformed into content. It must be some kind of prank, Helen says, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Or maybe they lost the bet and now they have to pretend to be, important. Richard laughs, a deep sound that resonates like a sentence. Other guests begin to approach, not to defend, to watch. The circle closes around the sisters like a Roman arena, where they are simultaneously gladiators and prey. An elderly woman, Beatrice, shakes her head disapprovingly, but it's not disapproval of the treatment they receive, it's disapproval of their very presence. A young waitress, Patricia, black like them, passes by with a tray of champagne. For a moment, her eyes meet Maria's. There's a painful mirror there. She serves. They invade. Same color, different fates. Patricia lowers her head and quickens her pace. Danielle feels the isolation growing like a siege. Every laugh is a spear, every curious look, a stone. She remembers her grandmother telling stories about social lynchings, when they didn't need rope, just looks and whispers. Daughter, there are places where our presence bothers them because it reminds them of what they did, and what they still do. Maria clutches her purse to her chest. Inside, the golden invitation to the charity event, physical proof that they have a right to be there. But she realizes that some rights are questioned regardless of the documentation. The heart beats faster, but the posture remains erect. Its inherited strength, its dignity sown by the mother, its resilience that comes from afar. You won't succeed, Helen says, her hostility now undisguised. Whatever you're trying to prove here. Danielle takes a deep breath, finds her voice. The only thing we're proving is that we exist. If that bothers you, maybe the problem isn't ours. The silence that follows is piercing. Andre stops filming. Marcos looks up from his glass. Even Patricia slows down to listen. Bother. Thomas laughs. You overestimate your own importance. Each complicit silence was a brick in the wall of exclusion, and they were alone on the outside, building a bridge with their own dignity. If you've ever felt the weight of judgmental looks before they even know you, tell us in the comments how it was and what you felt. The chandelier's light blurs. For a moment, Danielle is no longer in the gilded living room. She's in the small kitchen of her home, 10 years ago. The smell of laundry detergent mixed with strong coffee. Regina, her mother, leaning over the sink, scrubbing white hospital uniforms until her fingers are red from the effort. Maria, at 13, sitting on the wooden stool, watching every move. Danielle, at 15, doing homework at the kitchen table, the same table where her mother cut fabric on weekends to earn extra income. The sound of the sewing machine borrowed from the neighbor, Donna Carmen, echoed into the early hours of the morning. Tech, 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 tech. Mesmerizing rhythm of dreams being sewn together line by line. "Mom, why do you work so much?" Maria asked that night, watching Regina sewing at 2 in the morning. Her mother's eyes were red with exhaustion, but her hands wouldn't stop. A navy blue dress was taking shape, the same one Danielle would wear to her high school graduation. "Because there's a difference between wanting and deserving, daughter," Regina replied, without taking her eyes off her sewing. "You deserve more than I got, but the world won't give it to you for free." At the time, Danielle didn't fully understand. She thought her mother was exaggerating, that things were simpler. Now, in the Grand Plaza ballroom, every word resonates like a fulfilled prophecy. Regina stopped sewing for a moment. She looked at her daughters with an intensity that etched her memories forever. "You won't be born rich," she said, her voice firm but caring, "but you'll grow up with the bearing of a queen, because our skin carries history, not shame." She stood up, walked over to them, and cupped both girls' chins with her calloused hands. "Always remember, you are the daughters of those who built this country. When someone tells you that you don't belong somewhere, remember that." Back in the present, Danielle hears her mother's words echoing louder than the malicious laughter around her. Maria closes her eyes, can almost smell the strong coffee from the kitchen. Our skin carries history, not shame. They grew up watching Regina work 3 jobs to pay for Danielle's nursing school and Maria's administration. They grew up hearing that education was the only inheritance no one could steal. They grew up knowing that every achievement would be questioned, but that didn't make them any less deserving. The navy blue dress isn't just fabric. It's armor woven by hands that know how to fight. It's a reminder that they arrived here carrying the dreams of 3 generations. The voice of great-grandmother Rosa, whom they only knew through Regina's stories, whispers in their memory, "Girl, when you enter a place that doesn't want you, remember that your feet have already stepped on ground much more sacred than this ground." Rosa had raised 6 children alone, washing clothes for wealthy families. She never learned to read, but she taught Regina to dream. Regina taught her daughters to achieve their dreams. Regina, in memory, holding the finished dress. "This dress will bear witness to your victory, daughter. And when anyone doubts your right to be somewhere, remember, every stitch I sewed here was a prayer. You are not alone." Danielle, still a child, touching the fabric with reverence. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Mom, it's not just pretty. Danielle, it's armor." Some inheritances do not fit in a will. They are carried in posture, in a voice that does not tremble, and in the right to exist that no look can revoke. Thomas slams his palm against the marble countertop. The sound echoes dryly through the room, cutting off conversations and making glasses shake. His eyes are different now, no longer discomfort disguised as politeness. It's pure anger, as if the sister's presence were a personal affront to the natural order of things. Joam, the security guard, approaches with heavy steps. His black uniform, broad chest, and neutral expression conceal his own discomfort. He's familiar with the scene. He's thrown people out before. But something about this situation bothers him differently. The entire room stops. Conversations cease as if someone had turned off the ambient music. Helen digs her nails into Richard's arm, anxious for the outcome. Andre lifts his cell phone again, this time without hiding it. The show has reached its final act. "You had the chance to leave with dignity," Thomas says, his voice louder than necessary. He wants everyone to hear. He wants it clear who's in charge. Now you're going to leave the way people like you deserve to leave. People like you. Words are distilled poison. No need to say the color. Everyone understood the code. John hesitates for half a second. He looks at his sisters, then at Thomas. There's a visible internal conflict, paycheck versus conscience, order versus right. Sir. John tries, voice low. Maybe we can... Now, João. Thomas explodes. They won't tarnish this hotel's image. Call for backup if necessary. The word stain hangs in the air like a sentence, as if their presence were contamination, as if their existence were a crime against the aesthetics of the place. Clara, the receptionist, picks up the phone with trembling hands, but instead of dialing security, she hesitates. She looks at her sisters, then at Thomas. For the first time since the situation began, there's real doubt in her eyes. A small child, Gabriel, the son of guests, pulls on the hem of his mother's dress and asks too loudly, "Mom, why is the man being mean to the pretty girls?" The silence that follows is awkward. The mother, Laura, pulls her son closer, her face flushed. Danielle feels anger rise in her throat like lava. It's not just indignation. It's the ancestral fury of every black woman who has ever been treated like an invader in spaces she helped build. Maria squeezes her sister's hand tightly, a gesture of mutual support, an anchor in a storm. When they try to diminish you, you grow. Mother's voice echoes. When they try to break you, you become stronger. Because we are made of stuff they cannot understand. Her heart races, but her breathing remains controlled. It's a technique learned from years of being the only black person in the room, the only one questioned, the only one who has to prove the obvious. Thomas turns to the room, like a politician at a rally. "Excuse the embarrassment, gentlemen." Sometimes people confuse tolerance with invitation. Danielle finds her voice, cold as ice. The only embarrassing thing here is discovering that education doesn't come with money. João stops walking. Helen stops smiling. Even Andre puts down his phone. Maria adds, in a firm voice, "And that some manage to be small even in big places." The words echo off the polished marble. Thomas blushes, veins bulging on his neck. "Out. Now." The sound of public humiliation echoes like a siren in the marble lobby. But sometimes the echo reveals more about the screamer than the screamer. Pedro, the valet, bursts through the side entrance like a contained hurricane, sweat on his forehead, panting, eyes wide as if he'd seen something that changed everything. His footsteps echo on the marble, no longer the discreet walk of an employee, but pure urgency. The gilded room freezes like a photograph. Thomas, still gesturing theatrically, stops mid-sentence. João, the security guard, instinctively turns toward the entrance. Clara drops the phone from her hands. The sound of it hitting the counter echoes like a gunshot. Pedro runs straight to Thomas, ignoring protocol, hierarchy, everything. His gray hair is plastered to his forehead with sweat, his uniform wrinkled from moving too fast. There's barely concealed panic in his eyes. "Mr. Thomas," Pedro whispers, but desperation makes his voice louder than intended. "You'd better come. Now. To the entrance. It's urgent." Thomas frowns, irritated by the interruption of his moment of authority. "Pedro, I'm solving a problem here. Can't you see that?" "Lord." Peter raised his voice for the first time in 15 years of work. "For God's sake, come now." The scream echoes. Helen lets the glass slip from her hand. Richard straightens in his chair. Andre stops recording, confused. Even Gabriel, the child, stops tugging at his mother's dress. Something in Pedro's tone makes the air in the room grow thick. It's not just urgency, it's fear. It's the recognition that he knows something that will completely turn the tide. John, the security guard, frowns. In 15 years working with Pedro, he's never seen him like this. Clara watches the scene with wide eyes, as if sensing the world is about to turn upside down. Thomas looks at his sisters, then at Pedro, torn between irritation and curiosity. What the hell is going on out there? "Please, sir," Peter begs, his voice trembling. "Just come and see." Danielle and Maria exchange glances. There's something in Pedro's urgency they can't decipher. It's not about them, or at least not directly. It's something bigger, more complex. Maria feels a strange butterflies in her stomach. It's not exactly fear. It's a premonition, like when she was a child and knew something important was about to happen without knowing how. Danielle observes Thomas's change in demeanor. For the first time since they arrived, he seems insecure. He's no longer the man who controlled the situation with absolute authority. He's someone who doesn't understand what's happening. Sometimes the truth comes in ways we don't expect. Mother's voice whispers in memory. Pedro, sweating cold. Mr. Thomas, there's someone out there. And he's not happy. Thomas, losing his patience. Who the hell? What are you talking about? The owner, sir. Pedro swallows hard. The owner has arrived. The silence that follows is unlike any other. It's not a silence of curiosity or malice. It's the silence of someone who feels the ground is about to collapse. Clara covers her mouth with her hands. John lets his shoulders slump. Even Helen stops breathing. Some truths arrive in an imported car and a tailored suit, and completely change who is predator and who is prey. Eduardo Santos enters the room like a tamed force of nature. Navy blue Armani suit, Italian silk tie, leather shoes that cost more than Thomas's monthly salary. But it's not the expensive clothes that command attention. It's his presence. His shoulders are straight, his stride is firm, and his gaze cuts through the room like a sharp blade. The Golden Hall becomes a wax museum. Helen freezes with the cup in midair. Richard forgets to breathe. Andre instinctively lowers his phone. Some moments are too big to be filmed with shaky hands. Eduardo walks straight to where his daughters are. Each step echoes on the marble like a sentence being read. The crystal chandeliers seem to shine brighter, as if even the light recognizes royal authority. Eduardo stops in front of Thomas. The difference in posture is stark, a man who built an empire versus a man who merely manages crumbs. These are my daughters. His voice was deep, controlled, but charged with a power that didn't need to be shouted to be heard. Is there a problem with them? Thomas opens and closes his mouth like a fish out of water. The words that came so easily before are now stuck in his throat. João, the security guard, automatically takes 2 steps back. Clara drops her pen. The sound in the absolute silence echoes like distant thunder. Sir, Thomas stammers, sweat breaking out on his forehead. I didn't know. But you decided to judge, Eduardo cuts in, his voice still calm, but with a razor's edge. You decided to humiliate. You decided you knew who deserves to be here. Danielle feels tears burning in her eyes, not of sadness, but of relief, mixed with pride. Maria covers her mouth with her hands, emotion overflowing. They always knew their father was successful, a businessman, an investor, a respected man. But they never saw him wield power like this. They never saw him be both shield and sword. Fabric, Danielle thinks, her heart racing. They hadn't seen him in months because of business, travel, and their busy lives. But he appeared at exactly the right moment, as if he knew. Maria remembers her childhood, when her father would come home from work and they would run to hug him. She remembers him saying, "My princesses will never have to bow their heads to anyone." Now they understand that it wasn't just fatherly affection. It was a promise being fulfilled. Eduardo looks around the room, his voice carrying natural authority. I want everyone here to know something very simple. He pauses, letting the words sink in. This hotel exists because I allow it. Your jobs exist because I invest. And my daughters. Another pause. The silence is deafening. My daughters belong wherever they choose to be. Thomas tries to speak. Mr. Santos, if I knew, now you know. Eduardo cuts in sharply. The question is, what are you going to do with this information? The silence that followed was no longer one of judgment. It was one of recognition that some lessons in respect cost more than any formal education. Power changes hands like silent lightning. Thomas, who minutes ago commanded the hall like an emperor, now writhes like a defendant on the stand. His hands tremble as he adjusts his tie, a nervous gesture that betrays barely contained desperation. Clara abandons any pretense of working. She stands behind the counter, her eyes fixed on the scene as if watching an accident in slow motion. João, the security guard, crosses his arms and steps back, the body language of someone who no longer wants to be part of the situation. Helen and Richard exchange panicked glances. Their malicious laughter has become masks of profound embarrassment. Andre pockets his phone. Some moments are too big to be reduced to viral content. Eduardo walks slowly to the reception desk. Each step is calculated, measured, and laden with an authority that needs no proof. He stops in front of Clara and extends his hand. "May I see the property registry?" His voice is polite, but it's not a request. It's an order disguised as a courtesy. Clara, with trembling hands, hands over the heavy leather book. Eduardo opens it to the page he's looking for, turning the book over for everyone to see. There, in gold letters, Eduardo Santos, majority owner. The hall becomes a cemetery of dead expectations. 55%, Eduardo says, his voice echoing in the deathly silence. Controller, main investor, and, from what I can see, someone who needs to review his employee training. Marcos, the man who had lowered his eyes throughout the humiliation, slowly stands up. He walks over to his sisters and extends his hand. "I apologize," his voice low but firm. "I should have spoken sooner." Patricia, the waitress who had hurried past, stops pretending to work. She looks directly at Danielle and Maria and gives a discreet nod, a small gesture, but one filled with belated solidarity. Even Gabriel, the child, lets go of his mother's hand and walks towards Mary. "Are the girls the owner's daughters?" he asks, innocence cutting through the tension. "So they can stay, right?" Danielle feels something reorganize inside her chest. It's not revenge. It's validation of something she's always known, that respect shouldn't depend on a last name or a bank account, but sometimes it does. Maria watches Thomas crumble before her eyes. She feels pity, not satisfaction, because she understands that true change comes not from fear, but from awareness. Real power is not about making others bow down. Mother's voice echoes. It's about reminding them of their own humanity. Thomas, his voice breaking. "Mr. Santos, I didn't know who they were." Eduardo, calm but relentless. "That's exactly the point, Thomas. It shouldn't matter who they are. It should matter that they are people." Pause. The weight of the sentence echoes. "But since it matters to you," Eduardo smiles, but there's no warmth in the gesture. "Now you know who signs your salary." Clara approaches the sisters. "Girls, ladies, I'm so sorry, really sorry." Danielle, with dignity she never lost. "Thank you, but the right apology isn't for us. It's for the next person you judge by their appearance. Masks don't fall, they are ripped away by the truth, revealing that some prejudices cost more than any pride. If you believe that respect should not depend on surname, leave your like." An hour later, in the hotel's premium lounge, Danielle and Maria sit in Italian leather armchairs, their glasses of Dom Perignon sparkling in the soft light. Their navy blue dresses now look even more elegant. Nothing has changed in the fabric. Everything has changed in the viewer's eyes. Eduardo approaches with 3 glasses, smiling for the first time that night. It's not a smile of victory. It's the smile of a proud father watching his daughters occupy the space they always deserved. In the corner of the room, a black girl of about 8, Sophia, the daughter of new guests, watches everything with curious eyes. She saw the previous scene, heard the arguments. Now she sees 3 black people occupying the best space in the hotel as if it were natural, because it is. Clara approaches with a tray of gourmet canapés. Her movements are now respectful, genuine. She's learned something about herself that she wished she hadn't discovered, but that she needs to face. "Can I offer you anything else?" he asks, his voice sincere. Thomas spent the rest of the evening avoiding the lounge, but through the glass partition, he watches discreetly. There's something in his eyes that might be the beginnings of a conscience or the fear of unemployment. Maybe both. João, the security guard, waves respectfully as he passes. Marcos approaches and asks to join them for a few minutes. The conversation flows naturally. Three successful black adults sharing experiences others will never fully understand. Sophia approaches timidly. Maria sees her first, smiles, and motions for her to come closer. "Hi." The girl speaks softly. "Are you important?" Danielle bends down to her level. "We are people, like you, and people are important for existing, not for proving anything." "But the man had barely left when your daddy arrived," Sophia observes with the crystal-clear logic of a child. "Sometimes," Maria explains, "people need reminders that we're human. It shouldn't be that way, but it still is." Eduardo watches his daughters talk to Sophia. He remembers his own childhood, when he observed black adults in positions of power, dreaming of the day he would be no exception. "My mother would be so proud," Danielle thinks, discreetly touching the fabric of her dress. Regina is no longer alive to see it, but she is present in every stitch, in every lesson in posture, in every teaching about dignity. Maria senses ancestral presences: great-grandmother Rosa, who washed clothes to survive; Mother Regina, who sewed dreams; and now they, occupying spaces that past generations helped build but never enjoyed. Eduardo raises the cup, a toast, his voice filled with restrained emotion. "Not for today's victory, but for your continued presence. To the mother," Danielle adds, "who taught us that the place of a queen is carried in posture," Maria concludes. Sophia watches, absorbing each word like a seed planted in fertile soil. "When I grow up," she declares, "I will be important too." "You already are." The three voices respond in unison. Eduardo stands, adjusts his jacket, and looks out at the room where it all happened. There's no resentment in his eyes. There's determination. Today we change a person. Tomorrow we change a policy. Then we change a generation. Representation is not a favor granted. It is an inherited right, sown by hands that work to get us here, and a legacy we leave for those who come after us. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and share until the next video.